Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Facts on the Ground. I'm Misty Winston, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jesse Zerowell. Today, our guest has been described as dangerously perceptive. He's a stand-up comedian who has actually been on the Action for Assange Vigils several times and is one of our favorite guests. So check those out. But also, his comedy is very political and smart and witty and dangerously perceptive, I think would be a good descriptor for that. So our guest today is Krish Mohan. Krish, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. That was
Yeah.
it was a great intro.
Oh, thanks. I just kind of had to wing it because my computer kind of froze, so I could only read half of what I was supposed to read. And I was hoping that by the time I got through the first part, that I would then be able to scroll up, but it still froze. So I just had to kind of wing it there at the end.
No,
so
it sounded great. I've had my fair share
real
of
talk.
real shitty intros before, so that was top notch.
Misty always nails the
That was
intro.
me freaking out internally, like, oh shit, I can't scroll up.
I've had intros where it's like, this guy, I don't know, he's gonna say some shit that'll probably make everybody mad.
Yeah.
All right.
Although that's not fair. Okay, because here's the thing. I love political comedy, obviously. I mean, it's kind of, but you amaze me because you are very polite. Like your album's called Dangerously Polite, correct? The new one?
Politely angry. Politely
angry. I don't know why was I thinking dangerously. Maybe because dangerously
'cause
perceptive.
quote, which is also like an album title kind of sounding.
Yeah, it is. But you should your next one.
Yeah, that was actually I was actually thinking about that, but that was actually a quote given to me by a venue owner in Fayetteville, Arkansas, who ran this little wonderful listening room called Stage 18 and fortunately closed, which sucks. It had nothing to this was like a year before COVID and everything hit.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and it was kind of depressing. My show, when I recorded my album Empathy on Sale, and that was like the last show that they ever had in that venue. So it was like, I don't know, it was kind of touching to to be like the last show, and the show was so great and it was so much fun. But he gave me the quote, and I talked to him about it, and I was like, no one has I don't know, captured what I think I sound like on stage. So he was like, yeah, use it on whatever you want. It's great. And I was like, all right, cool. Nice. I'm definitely going to do that.
No, but I definitely think that that's a good way to describe your comedy. But and like I was saying, though, you are very good at being polite. Like I admire anybody who can speak about politics and not get furious, because I don't have that ability. I get really worked up and overly animated and I talk too fast. And you're very good at staying nice and calm and, telling great jokes and about terrible things and still making it funny, and I love that kind of humor. That's my favorite.
It's I think being on stage has kind of trained me to do that. Because like we were talking right before this, is I do get a bunch of different kind of people, and my goal is to try to get the people that don't see things the same way I do to at least understand where I'm coming from. And if I tell them to go fuck themselves, I feel like they're not gonna listen, and they might actually do what and leave, right? So I try to figure out a way to convey ideas that people probably don't know that much about, and a lot of it boils down to having empathy for your fellow man, some civil discourse, basically figuring out that the oligarchy that we live under does not give a shit about you and is sowing divide. They're manufacturing divide on the ground floor. And so how do you kind of see that? So there's elements of media criticism, which is Ron Placone does a really good job of media criticism, and he was one of the first people that helped me get on the road and stuff. So
Ron's great.
Having that. Yeah, so it's just how do I kind of use comedy as a way to at least get people to listen to different ideas? Because that's how I learned about a bunch of different ideas is like through
Yes.
Carlin and Hicks.
Krish, I don't know if you know this,
Yeah.
but the position you just took about trying to talk to people who disagree with you and try to get them to see your point of view, that it will get you called a Nazi today or fascist.
Yeah.
That's a true thing that's happening right now.
Yeah.
So if you
I
think
know.
that having a conversation with somebody who may not share all of your viewpoints, if you think that that's a good idea, then you're a fascist. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah,
I would just
by that logic, my parents, who voted for Trump in
You shouldn't be
2016
talking to
and
them at all, ever.
2020
They're
as
fascists.
well,
They're
but
racist.
as I've mentioned, as I've mentioned in previous shows, they've done a complete 180 with regard to Julian Assange and are very, I won't say they're activists, but their first perception was what the media put out. This is a rapist, high-tech terrorist, and they've come 180 from that and are, at least in principle, very big advocates of his freedom and what WikiLeaks has done. So, I
If they can
think
come
that
around on that issue,
that
then they can come around on anything. Because I will be honest with you guys, the smear campaign against Julian Assange has been one of the most involved, hardcore propaganda campaigns that I've ever like read about in history, or you know what I mean. Like there have been a lot of propaganda campaigns for many different things.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's the culmination. Well, I think if the CIA can topple Iran and fix somebody that's all about American interests in Iran, that would ultimately be what the CIA has been trying to do since like
Yes.
1949 or something along those lines.
well,
But
they did in 53.
yeah, but didn't it fail because the guy turned out to be uncontrollable? Like he wasn't particularly like like he was kind of a wild card, the person that they put in.
Well, that's
Well,
usually the
Charge.
case. Like we pick like these completely unhinged people.
Right, and they picked a religious extremist, and
well,
and
it
he
was
did what religious extremists do: is he riled up a bunch of fucking people and
Yeah.
turned on the
That doesn't
CIA.
usually go well.
well, I was referring to 1953 when the CIA, with the help of British intelligence, toppled Mossadegh and put the Shah in power. And so I'm saying, as an example, there's where the
They have
U.S.
actually
has been
done that.
directly involved in
Yeah.
toppling Iran before. But yeah, then, the Iranian Revolution happened. Khomeini came into power. It's hard to say. I'm a little reluctant to say that Iran became more Islamic after Khomeini came into power, because I just don't know how to quantify that. Like maybe there was a strong uh, community or practice of Islam, but we just didn't hear about it. But I think it's safe to say, Khomeini definitely, or probably like upped the Islamicization of Iran, and
Do you feel like it went more extreme from like a more because I do feel like you can be somewhat secular and a skeptic, but still be a religious person, right? And
yeah.
there's that fine balance. Like, do you think it went from that to a little bit more of an extremist of like, oh, if you're not someone who studies Islam, if you're not a Muslim, then you're an infidel, and we have to get rid of you, and you have to join. Basically, it's basically what happens to every religion at a certain point is you shift from like, oh, that's cool, you have a different religious philosophy than I do, but the core tenets seem to be the same, to, oh, you don't worship the same God that I do, well, then we have to behead you in the public square and make an example out of it. Like the Crusades, like.
Well, I think when it comes to the Iranian Revolution, just based on what I've read, the history of it, that there's definitely there's no denying that there was a huge pivot toward um, a more Islamic society in Iran when Khomeini came back from France, from his exile in France. And um, but at the same time, I think there was a huge secular component to it as well. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there was a very large communist party active in Iran at the time. And, you often hear about the Iranians who, we're hearing this again, stormed the embassy, which was basically a CIA post. And I don't know how many people are aware of this, but first of all, not all of them were um, Islamists and or extremists, and a lot of them were students. And what they did is they found as many whatever was there of the shredded documents from that CIA operation, and they actually pieced these shreds back together so they were able to see the whole document and read it and essentially um, you know prove what they knew all along, that the CIA and the UK were behind this, and understandably that not only infuriated them but
Somebody,
Iran's new leadership at the time. So um
Wait a second. Are you
it,
saying that
it,
people don't like it when the CIA infiltrate their country and take over things? That they get mad about that?
it's
Like, that's ridiculous. They should be thankful.
I'm
what an
reluctant.
un-American thing to say.
I consider myself an atheist, but I'm reluctant to call that extremism, because how are you supposed to react when
Right?
Exactly.
two
Yeah.
of the most major imperialist
I mean,
imperialist countries,
y'all,
like
if there was like an imperialist
that?
power that invaded the United States, Americans would freak the fuck out. Are
Well,
you
look at what they
kidding?
did
Like,
with
of
Russiagate.
course.
Look at what they did with Russiagate, right? And that wasn't
Yes.
Oh
even
yeah.
really an invasion. All they said was they manipulated the election. Well, to the
That
hardcore
was 4
Russiagate people,
years.
yeah, and I mean for 4 years they kind of went down that path of oh, it's Russia, right? Because now the Democratic Party has to basically take no responsibility for decades of neoliberalism that they pushed, right? And abandon the working class, and then they wonder why the working class doesn't want to vote for them, or why don't younger people want to vote for the Democratic Party anymore. Well, could it have to do with 30 years of supporting neoliberalism and look at Joe Biden. He claims
Mm.
that he's the face of the Democratic Party, and really he is, right? He's a
Yes.
segregationist. He created the crime bill, which he was pro-war on drugs. He treated Anita Hill like shit. He's been accused of rape and had an awful reaction to it. I mean, the list goes on, and this is a guy that's been in public office for what, over 40 years, like 43, 44 years, something like that.
47.
47,
They're a
almost
public
50
figure.
years.
Yeah.
Almost 50 years this dude has been in public office and has basically been on the wrong side of history
Of
the entire time.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
was
this
gonna
is
say he's done nothing he's done nothing positive.
He
no.
destroyed immigrant communities, Black communities. He is a horrible human being. He is Donald Trump.
Yeah,
He's
and this
Donald
is
Trump with better hair.
yeah, he
know?
just has a little bit of a
I
comb
don't
over.
know.
Right? I mean, it's hard to get worse.
That's a
So
close.
he's
That's a
Donald Trump
close
with better
call.
hair.
That's a close call right there. Biden's kind
Really?
of got like a I don't know.
Biden
like
doesn't
an,
really have any hair.
it's
He
like
has
an
that like
imp-
weird
it's like
attempted comb over thing.
it's like an imperial skullet.
But that's the thing.
I'm
This
sorry.
guy,
That's a good name for a band.
the Imperial Skullet. I do like that.
Great. That is great.
But I mean,
Yeah,
he
he's
is
a
the
piece of
face of the
shit.
party, and
Yeah.
and by basically putting this RussiaGate conspiracy out there, they have basically said, well, we don't need to take responsibility for any of this stuff. And that's what they did. And even when I would try to explain to them, like, okay, let's say this thing is real, which it's not. RussiaGate is a hoax. It's been proven to be a hoax time and time again. But these squishy liberals don't want to believe it because they're party loyalists, just like the Republicans are, right? And I would argue with them and say, okay, let's say Russia did hack the election. Do you know how many times America has done the same thing? So who do you think they learned it from? Right? Like this is all intelligence war shit. This is that bullshit of, oh, let's control other people's election and put people, like the CIA does that all the time.
American
And
exceptionalism is a hell of a drug, y'all.
yeah,
Oh,
and it just came back and bit you in the ass, right? And instead of being like, oh yeah, if that happened, it's because we basically wrote the playbook and they're copying our playbook, right? Like Chomsky even said that after the 2016 election. He was like, look, if Russia did manipulate American elections,
so what?
the entire world is laughing at America right now.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
You
It's
know, like
ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And here's the thing that drives me the most nuts about this is that it's not even just as awful as them not wanting to take ownership over their unbelievable failure, but it's also labeling your enemy now as a foreign enemy. Like they're foreign, and it's so much more nefarious than just not wanting to address, like, do a complete autopsy on the Democratic Party and why it sucks. You lost to Donald Trump, for God's sake. Like, there's something wrong. You guys need to have a conversation
and
if
then
they're
you
legitimate
barely
about,
won the
like,
second time.
right. And so I don't even know that they legitimately care that they lost to Donald Trump. I think they were fine with Donald Trump, the establishment. They were fine with him. I mean, he was a little hard to control and he was a little kind of a loose cannon, but for the most part, he did as he was told. But it's even more nefarious than that. It's then you're telling everybody that anybody who voted for Donald Trump is a Russian. They're a Russian asset. They're
It's true. It's
true.
true.
And it's that to me.
If you read the Epoch Times, it's true.
I'm a Russian. I mean, but seriously though, who can resist the multicolored buff burning meme? Who can resist that? I mean,
true.
you show that to
I
anybody and they're a socialist immediately. Like that's it.
Oh
no,
yeah, that's what turned me. It wasn't my life experiences or
don't lie.
Or who I am as a
what
person.
turned you was the meme about masturbating with Jesus. Don't lie.
That was it.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
one where I was like, this
That
is
got
why I'm
everybody.
a socialist, because they're pro wanking off. That's
why I want healthcare.
That's why I want healthcare. I want
healthcare.
everybody to be able to masturbate all the time. And the
With
government's got to pay for it. That's
you find me one person who came across that and was not titillated.
Yeah,
I will give you $1,000.
I believe in Jergens for all. That's what I believe. Everybody gets a bottle of lotion. Where's that platform? That's
I know,
what
right?
want. But fuck this $2,000. I want a whole crate of hand lotion.
Right.
That's what every American.
You don't need to end any wars. Just give everybody some tissues and some lotion, and things will work out fine.
And a year of free access to your favorite porn site.
Right.
You know? That's choices. We
and then
just gave
that's democracy.
A basket, because you gotta put the lotion in the fucking basket.
but that's the thing, right? How ridiculous was it? And that's the other. I kept saying this to people that brought up the memes. Is look, if memes can crash your democracy, maybe your country wasn't ready for democracy.
Yeah.
Right. Like if a meme can take down your entire election, it means we need a new election process.
Yes.
Maybe ranked choice voting is better.
Maybe we need a media that isn't state-run propaganda, so that way people aren't freaking out over memes, and like it's.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel Maddow. I wish somebody would make like an epic supercut of her exhaustive Russiagate coverage, and it was because the dramatic. Oh, some of it was good.
Have you ever seen the mashup that the Gray Zone did called Maddow's Tears?
Oh no, I haven't seen that one. But the funny one, the one that I like is the one that's the bombshell. The walls are closing in. It's the big end of the or the beginning of the end. Like that supercut's hilarious. If you guys haven't seen
Maddow's
that,
Tears, it's great. It's like so it's like they kind of like do a riff on Visine, and they have like a mash of a whole bunch of just Rachel Maddow's hyperbolics, and then at the end it's like, does not apply to Palestinian children, Iraqi children.
I would love to see a White House Correspondents' Dinner with like those real journalists, from the Gray
Yeah.
Zone, Mint Press
That'll
News, all
never
of those.
happen.
Yeah.
Well, because
Yeah.
they can take a fucking joke.
Right.
Like they actually have a sense of humor. Because every time that you've seen Aaron Mate or Max Blumenthal on Lee Camp show or on Jimmy Dore's show, like they actually have a sense of humor and laugh about not just the dark shit that they report on. Because I think if you're going to report on the things that they're reporting, you have to have a dark sense of humor, or else
Yes.
you're mentally and emotionally going to crush yourself. But look at the White House. I mean, the White House Correspondents' Dinner has notoriously been like the toughest room in all of comedy history, right?
Mm.
Like, I'm pretty sure people would have gone up on the Apollo stage instead of doing the White House Correspondents' Dinner, because none of those people have a sense of humor about themselves, right? Like, boy, I'm blanking on her name.
Lord,
the
that
woman,
is a room that takes itself really seriously, though.
well, they want to be praised for
Yes.
the mediocre journalism that they do.
Mhm.
And that's not.
Oh, they
what
think they're
comedians
worthy
do.
of that praise. Like they think they're that cool, I think.
Right. Right.
You
Well,
know?
even when Obama did his, I mean, they were softball jokes, right?
Mhm.
Like whoever
Yeah.
wrote these like softball late night comedy jokes. In terms of being jokes, like they're decent jokes. They have a good setup, they have a nice little middle, and they have a punchline that hits at the end, and you're like, cool, you know how to tell a joke. Because you're like a person that's been in social settings before.
Right.
But I mean, nothing was like Larry Wilmore and Stephen Colbert told more hard hitting, challenging the establishment kind of jokes, which
Yeah.
to me is what you're supposed to do as a comedian.
Yes.
And you
Absolutely.
look at that Stephen Colbert compared to this.
Yeah, that was like
weird,
right
neutered
before
version.
he did the switch to like the character he used to play. And
Yeah.
now he's like this fawning idiot who
Well,
like
as
cries because Joe
as-
Biden is president.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Fuck
was
off.
ridiculous.
as Jimmy always says, he became the person he used
Mhm.
to
Parody.
make
Mhm.
fun of and criticize and take to task.
Well, now he's got network money,
Right.
right?
Oh yeah.
And he's got an echelon of bosses, because that was the thing with Jon Stewart, was even though like he would go after advertisers, and then Viacom would have to be like, okay, you have to figure out a way to retract your statement from last week. And he was like, sure, I guess, I don't really give a shit. And the only reason why companies like Arby's didn't sue Viacom is because they actually they did well. Their public image improved when Jon Stewart called him out on their bullshit, and they didn't go after him and say, oh, libel, or oh, this guy is a fraud, or whatever. They were just like, oh, haha, that's right, we do suck, and now we're going to try to be better. Whether they did it or not is a completely different story. But they were fine with it, even though Jon Stewart was taking like real digs at them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you can kind of do that on cable, and I think Stewart kind of lucked out. But now that he's on net, like he's on CBS, and CBS, the president of CBS is notorious that Trump is bad for America, but he's good for CBS because it helped him with the fucking ratings, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so he'll air whatever he wants on his network, and then he has a comedian that does the flip side of it, where he spends his 15-minute monologue just writing a bunch of Trump jokes, where he calls him a Cheeto and he's orange and he's this and that,
Ugh,
like
so
and it's like
boring.
low hanging. Yeah, it's not really
My 10-year-old
anything
could do
good.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's no, I and Misty, not to call your daughter stupid because she's 10.
I'll get her.
And
Don't make me get her, dude.
that would be funny.
She'll get
That would be
you.
funny to me at 10, but Chris, you're right, and Misty, you too. It's like the joke anybody can make,
Right.
like when Bush was president, like Hitchens used to say. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Hitchens has a lot
Of his
to
own
atone
issues?
A lot of
for.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he also did a lot of good work, and I as like from the craft of writing, I admire him, but I certainly no hero worship. But he said, um, God damn it! This always happens. What
Did you
what what
blank
Let's
out?
Play you
Right
on?
there, and then it disappears.
Christopher Hitchens
Yeah,
said
but
something
just
about
before that.
that my kid making
Butch.
how 10-year-olds are stupid and they can't make good jokes.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So he said when Bush was still in office that you know, like it's the stupid joke anybody can make is to make fun of Bush in some way. He's like, I've done it before too. I've said his eyes are so close together that he could wear a monocle, like um
Which again, it's not a bad joke.
no,
Right?
You know, like it's a
it's
good
not.
joke. It's
I'm
just
just saying though, but when that becomes
When
the
anybody can do it, it's
discourse, like the
yeah.
dominant discourse, the dominant political discourse, there's something that's ruptured.
Yeah.
yeah. But
Suppose
that's
is
what people think is political comedy is making fun of the leader you don't like and the way that they look, right? And
Mhm.
there's nothing
No.
wrong with that. Look, I've called Mitch McConnell a turtle.
Everybody has.
It's the easy joke to lead into how he's a giant monstrous piece of shit that won't let any real legislation
Yeah.
go through. For years he did that, right? Like, so how do you kind of get people? So I understand that, but to people the rest of it, if you talk about McConnell, and weirdly enough, there's an NPR series that does a really good job of like kind of dissecting what's going on with Mitch McConnell. But
That's
basically,
a
he's a
level of
dude.
psychopathy I don't know if I'm ready for.
Yeah, well, he just wants to win. That's his whole thing. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't give a shit about people. He cares about Mitch McConnell winning, right?
Right.
Like, that's all he
How
cares.
much longer does he think he's going to be alive?
I don't know, but I
He's
shouldn't
got
say it on
quality
camera, but
healthcare.
I won't be sad if Mitch McConnell were to,
I'm
follow
probably
the
I'm probably if I call you from a federal jail tomorrow, it's because of that comment. That question.
Well, that's the thing.
I
Is
do that all the
most
time,
people-
dude.
but most people look at political comedy as the joke about the Cheeto or but that's not that's you're doing a roast joke, and it's still a joke. It's not bad, and it's the bottom part of punching up, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not breaking through. You're just kind of hitting the ceiling, and you're like, cool, I did my job. But you're not going after the deeper issue. Like,
Exactly.
you're not talking about who McConnell is. You're just saying he looks like this thing. Ha ha ha. Which is okay. That's funny, but what else do you have to say? Like,
Yeah.
Jeff Sessions. It's funny to make fun of his ears. Great, but he also said the worst thing about the KKK is that sometimes they smoke weed. That's the worst thing about like, how much more do you need to see like that there's there's a racist war on drugs, and
Yeah.
two, like, that's your fucking
That's your problem with
that's
the
your breaking.
KKK.
Yeah, like the KKK smokes a plant every like what are you talking about?
Oh.
Like, there's the fodder for the humor, right? That
Yeah.
hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But people get mad when you bring that kind of stuff up, or you delve even deeper and make jokes about the drug war, or make jokes about the military industrial complex. The people that watch CBS and they watch Stephen Colbert, when they come to see me or or Lee or Jimmy or any of these other truly progressive comics, they they get pissed because that's not something that
Used
that's
to.
not the world. Yeah, that's not the worldview that they're used to hearing about.
Right.
They're used to hearing about, let's make fun of the Republicans, not point out that there is a bipartisan oligarchy. It's just a more compartmentalized oligarchy, right?
Yeah.
You have the Yas Queen on the left and you have the
Yeah.
Turtle King on the right, and then you have the presidency, which weirdly enough, like, should not have the amount of power that they do. Like, the president picks Supreme Court judges.
Yeah.
What the fuck is
Yeah.
that?
Oh.
They're supposed to be an apolitical judicial organization, and now you are assigning a political party to them. So
It's
again,
a
it's like,
problem.
how
People
how
never
do you?
talk about that.
They don't. But that's the thing
Yeah.
is, but they're fine with it as long as their team is winning, and that's what
Right.
it really boils down to. It's all about whose team you're on, and it goes from the office of the president all the way down to some some fucking schlub doing comedy on stage. Whose team are you on, right? And if I go up and I criticize the Democrats, I'm not on team whatever.
Team Blue.
But I'm on team people. right?
Right.
And
Yes.
So
like this is,
Oh,
these
thank you.
Krish,
people are
Yeah.
like, don't
let
don't
me
serve any.
let me ask you about something that builds off of that. You often hear the criticism that celebrities, comedians, entertainers, artists should just shut up and do their thing, and they shouldn't be political. And I'm wondering how much of that sort of pushback you've received. And I fully disagree with that position, by the way.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd just like to get your perspective on that.
It's a lot in, so I've been doing comedy for 15, 16 years, something like that. And so I mean when I started, obviously I wasn't talking, I started when I was 16. I didn't have political opinions that, were well thought out. My political opinions were, well, the Democrats seem nice, and that's literally that's all I had, so it really depends on where you're at and what you want to do with your art. And I do see comedy and certain film and music and all this stuff is it is art. It is people expressing their art, and just like everything, art can be co-opted. But I have looked at comics that seem relatively apolitical, and I can find the political stance within it. It might
Hmm.
not be overt, but they're making a political stance. So regardless of what they say, oh, don't be political on stage, somehow in some way, shape, or form, they are making a political statement, whether people realize it or not.
I feel
You
like
know,
Bill Burr is sort of fits into that category,
he
and I'm saying
does.
that like with respect. I respect his comedy, and yeah, he's not like overtly political like in the way Bill Hicks was, right?
Right.
Or not so like in your face politically the way Bill Hicks was. But like you said, there is maybe you could say an undertone of like
Yes.
I
politics to
think that
it.
that's just normal. I mean,
Yeah,
everything is
yeah,
political. Life is political.
yeah.
And
Exactly.
so, yes, your biases are going to leak out. And even if you're a performer or whatever, that's just human nature because literally everything around you is political. Everything. I mean, the roads that you drive on, the schools your kids go to, the property taxes where you have your house, or you know what I mean? Everything is political.
Yep.
Hmm.
So, I mean, the people, that's what drives me nuts when people say, to the basketball player, oh, just shut up and dribble. Well, no, like that
No.
Yeah.
person has an opinion and they're a citizen of society and they should be allowed to express that. Just because
Yeah.
they
Hmm.
play basketball doesn't
Yeah.
render that like a non-opinion. Like that's
But
ridiculous.
look at how powerful it is too. Is there is an obsession in America, and I think globally, with sports, with athletic prowess, right? In Europe and Asia, it's probably surrounding soccer and cricket, right? Like, or field hockey, whatever the sport is.
Hmm.
But these people become almost mythic,
Mhm.
because of their athletic prowess. They become like these legends, and because of like we talked about earlier, there is this hero worship in our society. If these heroes that people worship as legends suddenly say, hey, you know what, there is a very racist criminal justice system in America, and we need to do something about it. And as somebody that has this platform, that has this audience that I can tap into, I'm going to express that, yes, you should be out there on the streets protesting, whatever.
Hmm.
And when do you, and it makes an impact, right?
Hmm.
Like this year, I talked to Graham Elwood about it earlier this year. Is I'm not a big sports guy, but to know that a bunch of these ESPN commentators now have to sit there and talk about this strike and what it's actually about, and discuss police brutality honestly on a
Hmm.
corporate network that wants nothing to do with this topic, period, because they want these sports to be an avenue of escapism.
Hmm.
I think that's hilarious, first of all, because now you're like you're forced to talk
It's
about it.
it, it's
But
also
it's,
a coup of sorts.
yeah, but that's
Yeah,
also like that's the
in a
power
good
of labor.
way. Yeah.
Like, say what you will, these basketball players, or football players, whatever, they are in some way, shape, or form the employee of the network that airs their game.
Yeah.
And now
We just talked to Justin Jackson actually, and he said, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He did the Force the Vote. Okay, yeah,
Yes.
I love him. I love him because I am a sports girl. I love college football. He played for Northwestern. I'm an Ohio State girl, so there's an issue there.
Right.
But I was there when we beat them in the Big Ten championship game, though. I had to make sure to get that dig in before we interviewed him, though. Like I didn't talk college football the whole time, not at all. I was proud. But yeah, so I am a sports.
Very restrained.
I did a good job. That whole damn episode could have been nothing but football. So you're welcome.
Yeah. Well, luckily you took Thorazine beforehand. So.
But like I played sports growing up. I was a softball player. I was a shortstop. I was a cheerleader. I was in track. Like I was an athlete. Like, and my whole family is athletes. Like they all played sports, and so I'm a very sports oriented person. So yeah, we talked to Justin Jackson, and he said that really since Colin Kaepernick, it's gotten a little bit more friendly. Like he said that his organization, the Chargers, have been very supportive of him, being more public. I mean, do put out a tweet in defense of Julian Assange, and one thing to come out in favor of Medicare for all, it is another thing entirely to come out and publicly support Julian Assange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know that because I am a Julian Assange activist, and it is a very lonely place sometimes because, like we talked about earlier, the propaganda campaign against him has been intense. So he's a very triggering figure for a lot of people.
It's one of those things that I, at this point, with and I do think the pro Assange movement has grown.
Yes.
Partly thanks to what you guys are doing, and people like Kevin Gustola and what Lee has done, like Jim, all of these people.
Thank you for that compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I learned about what Julian Assange was doing, because when I was, I don't know, 23, 24 when I first heard about him, and I didn't know anything about WikiLeaks. I didn't know anything about Julian Assange. I just knew about him in the ether. And once I started learning, I was like, why are we criminalizing this person, right? So to me, I still can't figure out the psychology behind somebody other than the fact that they're heavily propagandized by corporate media. I don't know how you can't look at what he's doing, even through the propaganda, and say, why is it a crime to reveal other people's crime, right? Isn't that what justice is about?
Yeah.
So,
well, they've done a very good job at making it very convoluted. And so people don't even know what they think they know, if that makes any sense at all. It's, we have like 5 different states working together to destroy this one human being, tear him down. They've made this caricature of him. He's turned into like this comic book villain or something. And so I have found that there are either people who have never heard of him, have no idea what you're talking about, and those people are amazing. I love them. And then there are people who have heard every bad thing that they have ever thrown out against Julian Assange, and they believe it. And those people are really hard to deal with. I have done it. I have gone to bat in those situations. It is, you come out feeling like you just like walked through, or the game, the show Wipeout. Like I feel like I just did like a Wipeout circuit or something. Like just got my ass kicked. It is exhausting because
it's exhausting.
It really is. But here's the thing: once people see reality and you hand them the actual truth, because there's documentation of all of this stuff from the Sweden case to everything, like everything. And once you show people, they absolutely come around. I have seen it with my own eyes. It's insane to like witness. I've had people DM me and say, hey, I didn't know, like I was anti-Assange and now, you know what I mean? Like they can be turned around. You just have to be patient enough. And I'm not always that person.
My sister, she, very supportive and has been coming to all the Zoom shows that I was doing over the summer. And I did a show about the Espionage Act and what's been happening with whistleblowers. And there was a big section about Assange, because that's, how do you not talk about whistleblowers and the Espionage Act and not talk about Julian Assange at this point, right? And she texted me after the show and she was like, I had no idea the amount of like shit that he has been through.
Yeah.
Because all she really heard was WikiLeaks was some kind of rogue organization. So she was like, okay. But when she saw all the stuff and the CNN article, that was partly what I was dissecting in that show, was that insane CNN article that came out in 2018 or something. And it's just like fucking section after section after section that was debunked over and over again.
Yeah,
And
and there was the Guardian one by the
Manafort.
the ever ignoble Luke Harding.
Yeah.
Luke, if you're watching,
But seriously though, that I will give him some credit. Y'all, they invented a whole ass outfit for Paul Manafort in that article. Like they came up with he was wearing sandy colored chinos, and I mean they went all out. They got him a whole ass outfit. I mean, well done, Luke Harding, you propagandist piece of shit. Sorry. Anyway,
actually, I've posted it on Twitter a few times, and I'll post it again after the show. But there's this really excellent review that Julian Assange did of a book Luke Harding wrote about Snowden, as if he was like one of the journalists, like with Glenn Greenwald and
Laura Poitras and
what's his name, Ewan something from the Guardian, and he was never there. Like he didn't work on breaking the story, or maybe they had him like write copy or something, but like he was not investigating it. And
Brian Williams, Brian Williams, right? He's the guy that lied.
Yeah. Brian Williams, Hillary Clinton in Kosovo, I believe it was.
Was it Kosovo? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
sniper fire. I'm pretty sure.
The sniper fire
she
thing.
Was under that non-existent.
Man, she lies so much.
So again, I'm losing the point of what I was trying to say.
Who knows? We were talking about Julian Assange. And I got worked up as usual.
No, it's just one of those things. I think like once you kind of see what they're doing to him,
I don't know how you cannot be outraged. Like currently, right now, he's being held in this ridiculously old prison. It doesn't have a proper heating system. They won't give him his winter clothes that they were given in October to give to him. He is trying to insulate his window with books. He is basically in solitary confinement. No, he shouldn't be there. There's an order for his release. The judge wrote an order for his release. And because the U.S. prosecution is dicking around with this appeal and pretending like they have a case, y'all got laughed at in your own courtroom, like presenting your case. Your own witness laughed at you. The judge laughed at you. You don't have a case. They don't have a case. That's what's most frustrating, is there is no case. If you look at the courtroom documents, they have nothing. They have nothing. And yet this man's going to end up getting extradited and tortured for, the rest of his life in a U.S. hole somewhere. And it's infuriating. And it's even bigger than that. You're losing your First Amendment. Your First Amendment is being destroyed in broad daylight. And y'all are just marching along like nothing's wrong.
People are more concerned about what happened with Jim Acosta and how Rachel Maddow was treated. And, it's like Jim Acosta is a fucking joke of a journalist. All he's known for is yelling at Trump. That's not what journalists do.
I don't even consider him a journalist. Yeah, he's just like he's like a yeller in a suit.
Yeah. I think that's
with the notepad
is to me the point of what we're doing and what comedians and artists do, to reiterate the point that I made earlier too, is that's our job. Like our job is to hold a mirror up to society and to leaders and power structures, and to be like, this is what you look like. Heads up. You look like a real jackass, FYI. Yeah. Like, and what's troubling to me now is, again, it's picking teams. You can't do that to the team that you are supposedly on, where people will come to see my show and they assume, oh, brown Indian immigrant comic, that talks about lefty politics, he must be a Democrat. And it's tough. Like, I've had people pleading to me after shows to join the Democratic Party and to vote for the Democratic candidate, because that's the stereotype that I need to fit in order for them to make sense of what's happening in the world, right? Rather than be like, no, no, no. But again, that's what happens in a duopoly. You have to pick sides, and it narrows what thought you can actually have. So, oh, you're a Trump supporter. You must be a fascist. You must be a white supremacist. You can't be a disillusioned Bernie voter who realized the system was rigged and none of this shit matters and is very jaded about the electoral process. Right?
Yes.
Like that thought doesn't make sense to somebody that thinks only in terms of the red and blue in that duopoly term. So they miss this whole scope of just every other thought process that happens outside of that paradigm.
Well, it's like Kendrick Lamar spits in one of his songs. There are levels to it, you and I know, and it's like that's what it is. There are levels to it. It's not a binary. It's not black and white.
Well, any ideology that has you labeling 75 million people as one thing without any like beyond surface thinking, that's a problem. You should probably reevaluate yourself. And that's a ridiculous notion. I mean, we're seeing that right now with Jimmy Dore just had that interview with the Boogaloo Boy. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Is that right? Boogaloo?
Yeah.
Boogaloo?
Yeah.
I don't know. Those guys with the funny name that wear Hawaiian shirts, whatever.
Right.
But people who didn't even watch that interview, who self-admittedly didn't watch that interview, were outraged. We're just outraged on Twitter about this interview. And you didn't even watch it. Like, I went into watching that interview. I had kind of heard of them before, but I honestly didn't know I didn't know that they were right wing or left wing, or I had no idea. I've just kind of heard the name, but never paid much attention.
Mostly they're right wing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I even looked it up on the ADL website, and it says that most of them are not white supremacists. There are white supremacists that can be found in the movement. I mean, there are some really racist leftists. So, I mean, that's not like okay. But I went in just listening to this dude. Like, I don't really care his affiliation or whatever. I'm just listening to this dude, and he's like, yeah, I used to do environmental activism, and I want to abolish ICE. And I'm pro LGBTQ, and I'm actually gay, and I'm anti-war, and I'm like, okay, I don't disagree with anything this dude's saying, but you apparently can't agree with somebody who may be affiliated with a group that other people don't find satisfactory without being labeled a fascist.
Here's the funny part about that, though, is over the summer we had the blue leaks that came out, and within the blue leaks, what they were discovering was they knew that the Boogaloo Boys were basically calling violence against cops, right? A bunch of law enforcement knew that that's what was happening, and I think in one of the groups, I'm probably gonna get the state wrong, but maybe it was Oregon, went and attacked a sheriff's department, right? And I was a Boogaloo Boy, and they were talking on Facebook about doing this. The cops, when they look at it, they take this organization that has been deemed right wing, and they'll say, "Oh, well, these are actually, these anti-police protesters. they're siding with the anti-police protesters, to attack cops." So when you kind of see that sort of stuff, where it's like, okay, they're a right wing pro-Trump organization, and they're white supremacists and fascists, but then you find out that they're anti-cop, and the cops spin it around and say, oh, they're actually working with the left-wing protesters, and now we can take the left-wing protesters and say, oh, they're actually violent. So they're being used to subjugate, all these defund the police, Black Lives Matter protesters, and give the cops a justified reason to attack them. So it's just weird. Like, what kind of mental gymnastics do you need to do to figure out what exactly this organization is about? And the reality is that this organization is, you probably can't fully define this organization, right? They do talk about acts of violence against cops, so they're very anti-cop. They're kind of a bunch of veterans that are just disillusioned by the fact that they're not getting care from the country that they sacrificed their life for. So again, it's like, you got to think about what that's going to do to somebody, right? Like, when you come back home, all of a sudden it's very difficult for you to get care. You basically gave up a bunch of your life, and because you didn't choose to continue down the path of being in the military, you aren't given the same services that active duty members are, right? Like people that are career military people. Of course, that's going to make you disillusioned and
Yeah.
pissed off and
Yeah.
anti-government and anti-police and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
and rightly so.
right. And does just being anti-government and anti-police, does that make you right wing or left wing? Well, at this point, that's impossible to say. Right, because there's right wingers that are anti-police for different reasons than why left wingers are anti-police.
Yep.
You know, they're looking at it as a privacy argument. We're looking at it as a racial justice argument. So, but who gives a shit? Both sides are calling for changing the policing system.
Right.
Right. So it becomes difficult to say whether one side is right wing or left wing just based on that one thing. And now the mental gymnastics the left has to do, because Jimmy Dore interviewed somebody from the Boogaloo Boys who happened to be probably more left wing, like your brain gets shattered because one side is saying, oh, they're white supremacists, the other side saying no, they're plants for the left wing, and they're like Antifa, anti-police people. So now we can what both can be true, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
That just means the organization isn't a monolith.
And it's sort of the flip side of someone like Max or Anya from the Gray Zone going on to Tucker Carlson's show. It's like, it's just kind of like the reverse reflection.
But it's not really, because that guy didn't come on to Jimmy Dore's show and talk right-wing stuff. That guy came on to Jimmy Dore's show and talked stuff that I believe in.
Oh no,
like,
no, I'm not saying
like,
I'm not saying in terms of what he said. I'm saying in terms of how it's been perceived.
Yes.
Because, you know, people
that's perceived by people who didn't watch it. Oh my God.
People are like, Anya or Aaron or Max, how dare you go on Fox? And it's kind of like the flip side of that, I think.
Well, that's the thing is when you look at someone like Tucker Carlson, he's more libertarian than he is a right-wing, you know, Republican bootlicker, or you know what I mean? Like, he still challenges the party.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, I don't think that he's necessarily an ideologue in any way. I think he's very self-absorbed and like very into his fame, and you know what I mean, so I think he'll say whatever he needs to say to play the character he needs to play to get the ratings, to do the thing, to the whatever. But he has been pretty consistent on war, for example. He was very good on Syria, he was great on Russia, he's amazing on Assange. Get mad at me if you want, he's amazing on Assange. But he's the only person in mainstream media who will have anybody on to talk about Julian Assange. Don't be mad at me for saying that. Be mad at Rachel Maddow and Wolf Blitzer and Chris Cuomo for not ever talking about Julian Assange, because then I wouldn't have to praise Tucker fucking Carlson. You know what I'm saying?
I think Tucker Carlson, and this is just my theory, but he's stuck between the persona that he's probably both trying to, you know, continually build for himself, and then also sort of like what's projected onto him, you know, like when you're a celebrity and people are just constantly projecting onto you like something, and you almost kind of like ingest it just because it's just projected upon you so much, you know. I think like he's caught between that, and I think he said and he said some shitty things. He's produced some shitty programs, but I think he's just like, with regard to his principles, he's just, I don't know. It's almost like he's still trying to figure stuff out. Like,
I think he's
what's the acronym? SLAP, still learning about politics.
What's the acronym SLAP stand for?
Still learning about politics.
Oh, still learning about politics. Well, I think I agree with you, Jesse. I think he is stuck in a difficult spot. When you hear him talk more candidly, there's a great interview that came out a couple years ago with Glenn Greenwald interviewing Tucker Carlson, where he's just freely talking about a bunch of issues. And yeah, he's anti-war. He thinks that what happened with Iraq and Afghanistan was a travesty, and like we had no business being there. But he is still anti-immigrant. He's a little xenophobic when it comes to immigration because he's one of those people that are like, "Hey, where are these fucking people coming from?" Right? He's also pro-police. Because he's a rich, affluent white dude, right? And he's got a bunch of property, and who's going to protect it other than the police? Because that's what they do. They protect rich people's stuff. That's the point of the police. That's always been what the point of the police is. So I think, but the public persona is that he has to be more aligned with Republican talking points. What I think is also interesting is more Republicans are pro-Assange than you would think.
Yeah.
Because
I know.
they look at it as they're all about
civil
freedom.
liberties thing for them.
It's a civil liberties thing for them, exactly. And so, again, how are you going to convince if the argument is, oh well, nothing gets done in Congress because of this left-right divide, this red-blue divide? Well, how do you convince somebody that's on Team Red to join an issue that's important to Team Blue, right? So you have to It's always been funny to me that like Joe Biden is preached as this fucking aisle-reaching angelic being, but when people on the ground do the same thing, if Jimmy Dore does the same thing, Jimmy's a fascist and a neo-Nazi and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
right? It's this hypocrisy that
Bernie Sanders. The same people that these turds hold up as a messiah in 2016, that was what they praised him for. Oh my gosh, look, he went on Fox News and he convinced them to want Medicare for all. Oh my God, he's
72% of people.
He did such a good job. And now those same people who were praising Bernie Sanders for doing it are calling me a fascist and wrecking all of the work that Bernie Sanders did to bridge that divide.
But Tucker's doing the same thing. Tucker's doing the same thing. Does Tucker, at the end of the day, Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson probably have more political differences than they do similarities, right? But both of them will invite each other on their show to have an honest discussion about what's going on. Right. Tucker, the issue with Tucker, I think, is that I think he's on a network that has to side with mainstream Republican politics, and he doesn't line up with that. So I think they give him some leniency on it, and I do think that Tucker is going to become the Rachel Maddow of the Biden presidency, because he's very the day after the election, this dude was going off about, all the socialist bullshit that Joe Biden is going to do. And it's like, okay, if Joe Biden was a socialist, I would be excited to vote for him.
I would be super excited.
I wouldn't be trying to figure out how to fake my own death so I don't have to vote, period.
Right.
You know what I mean? How do I just go and I don't have to deal with a bunch of people being like, you didn't vote, you didn't do your duty as a citizen?
Bring that shit on.
In the fucking greatest robbery known in American history.
Yeah. Those people don't bother me. Bring it on.
Right. So it's just one of those things where Joe Biden's not a socialist, but Tucker's going to frame it that way because that's what the GOP does.
Ratings.
Right?
Yeah.
Ratings.
And that's going to spike the ratings.
Yeah.
What didn't spike the ratings is when he's calling for pardoning Assange, when he's saying that John Kiriakou should be pardoned by Trump, right? That's not necessarily spiking the ratings. It is getting a bunch of real progressive lefties to be like, wait, what the fuck did he say? And then go watch the clip, which helps a little bit. But, the average Fox News viewer is probably looking at that going, who the fuck are these people?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So they give him a little bit of leeway in that, as long as he comes back and says socialism is evil and it's going to lead to, the revival of the USSR and the Russian threat and it's a threat to national security.
That's my problem with Tucker is I don't think you can be on mainstream media and be an honest actor in any way. Yep. And so I can deal with just about anybody if I believe you're coming at me honestly. If I think that you have an honest viewpoint and that you're working from truth, your truth, I can usually deal with that. I cannot handle dishonest actors, people who have an agenda or who are just saying the cool thing to say or what. I can't handle that. Like it just grosses me out. And that's my problem with Tucker Carlson. Is he great on war? Is he seriously? He's amazing on Julian Assange. He really is. He's the right before Trump left office, the final 3 days, Tucker's show was dedicated to talking about Julian Assange. He had Jimmy Dore on, he had Pamela Anderson on, he had, who else did he have on? He had somebody else on. He had Stella, Julian's partner, on like a couple weeks before that. Like, he has done an amazing job for Julian Assange, and I will praise that every time, because I wish more people in mainstream media would do that. Actually, I shouldn't even need to ask people in mainstream media to do that. This is your profession, homies.
That's what you should do.
Yeah.
You should probably talk about this.
There should be a segment every day on CNN, MSNBC.
Do you find that fascinating? Because you are very perceptive, but do you find that fascinating that this is the greatest, I say it all the time, this is the most important court case on press freedom in human history.
Yes.
And nobody's covering it.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible to me that we, since he got illegally ejected from the Ecuadorian embassy,
I say abducted or kidnapped.
He got kidnapped. Yes. He got sold. He got sold, basically. He got pimped out, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
For $4 billion from the IMF.
He got renditioned. If you want to go into the war on terror speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he did. Yeah. I don't mean that facetiously. Like,
no,
that was...
we've had people on the Assange vigils who have told us, stop calling this an extradition hearing. This is a rendition. Call it what it is. And that's the truth.
That's probably more accurate than extradition. But even the extradition isn't even being covered, right? They're CNN or MSNBC aren't really talking about the fact that this is even happening, even in their propagandistic terms, because again, and this is something I think they've learned from the DNC, is when you give credence to something that you oppose, you make it bigger than what you expect. Because I think it's anybody in the establishment gets cocky about it because they think that they're so big and they have so much money that, if we talk shit on the little guy, who cares, right? Like, they're going to lose anyway. It's what happened with Bernie. It's what happened with AOC. And then you look at someone like Shahid Buttar, who ran up against Nancy Pelosi, and she didn't say dick all about him. And he was kind of not left in obscurity. I think enough people kind of knew about him thanks to independent media covering him. But I mean, he wasn't really talked about the same way that AOC and Bernie are talked about. And his platforms are about the same. They're probably a little bit more radical than AOC's, but they're on the same spectrum, right? And I think it's the same thing with corporate media. Is this something important? Absolutely. Is it something that's related to every journalist's jobs? Absolutely. But they're not journalists. They are state propagandists at best. And so they don't really care. And if they give it weight, if they give it credence beyond the one CNN article that was written maybe a month after he got kidnapped, there's nothing else. And they leave it to people like Tucker Carlson, because then you have the Hillary camp that can sit there and say, oh, look, he's being praised by the right wing, and he's being praised by these Trump sycophants. So that validates us in what we said of him being a Russian agent, and you shouldn't support that. And people go, oh, well, I guess that must be true. Going back to that red-blue fucking bullshit dichotomy that this country has, right? So, but that's what it is. They don't care. They're state propagandists. So they're just, by keeping that out, because there might be a chance that even 10% of people go, wait, what did he really do? And then they look into it, and then they find the Action for Assange vigil. They find Kevin Gustola. They find Lee Camp or Jimmy Dore.
They just find the collateral murder video. I don't know how anybody can watch the collateral murder video and think Julian Assange is a bad guy, because
you can't.
There's
no way you can watch that video and come out of it saying,
"Oh, this guy's." There are children in that van.
And they're laughing about it. They're making jokes about it.
It's like a video game. It's so disturbing. I have honestly, I have a hard time watching it. Like, I'm an Assange activist, and I think I've maybe only seen that thing all the way through twice in my whole life, because I can't. It's hard. Some of the most just flippant disregard for human life.
And
ever.
there's there's even the one part where the one of the pilots or gunners is like, "Come on, buddy, just pick up the gun. Just pick up the
Yeah.
gun."
Yep.
He just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
And then I
it's
think at one point somebody says, "Well, they
disgusting.
should have brought kids to a battle."
Yes.
What?
No, it's not a
Disgusting.
battle. This
That's
is not
not
a
a
war zone.
They were on their way to
These
school,
are
you
civilians.
absolute cretin. Are you kidding me?
These
Like,
are
it's so disturbing, and it's,
civilians, and
awful.
including journalists and kids.
Two
Yes.
Routers journalists were killed, and,
Right.
And that wasn't a huge deal. Nobody cared.
Routers doesn't talk about this.
No.
That's what's
Yeah.
astounding to me is, and this is how you know that these journalists have been propagandized or they've been silenced. If
Bought.
it was, if that was me, I mean, I don't understand how people still work for Routers when two of your journalists were shot dead by the American military. There's a publisher that showed you evidence of that. And there's still people that are like, no, I'm going to stick with this organization. Yet clearly this organization doesn't give a shit about you. Like your life is worthless to them. You know,
Yeah.
like they're all in it for the clicks and
Well,
whatever
they
fucking
couldn't
donor
prove
that
that
they're getting money.
more with their treatment of Julian Assange. All of these, the Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they've all made money off of Julian's work. They have all cited
Yes.
WikiLeaks. They use WikiLeaks to this day as source information for articles that they write. They're still making money off of it. They turn their back on him faster than anything I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, they completely shunned him. They don't talk about him. They don't support him. You're just now starting to see some of these journalists come out and be like, okay, well, maybe this is not great. Like, he shouldn't be extradited. And it's like 10 years too late, fuckwad. Like, what is wrong with you? I mean, it's like sorry, like limping to the finish line. Like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. We probably shouldn't do this. Like, there's something wrong with you. Like, if money is that important to you, or you're willing to sell out your principles to that degree, like, you should probably work on yourself. I mean, just a thought.
Well, I think that's where the hacker narrative comes from, is to kind of discredit a video. Yeah, but I mean, even then it's like, oh well, he was you know, this video was released as a hack, so it was released illegally, which makes him a criminal rather than someone that showed you what
and then
the military industrial
he's
complex does.
He's a hacker. And then they can feel okay about othering him and not supporting him and not defending him because, he's not a journalist. He's a hacker.
Right.
Well, that's been proven inaccurate over in court.
Time and time again. Yeah. Over and over and over again.
It's the straw man approach. You know?
It's a coward's position. Yes, you all are cowards. Every single Chris Cuomo, Wolf Blitzer, Fredo, you can come at me. I don't give a shit. Rachel Maddow, anybody who is silent on Assange, well, really anybody, but especially if you're a journalist claiming to work in media, you're a coward. Seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
There are problems. And that goes for all of you in independent media too. Yes, I see you too. I keep
and like, you know, people like Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper,
Howard.
Mika Brzezinski, like Howard. You don't fool any of us for a minute. Like, we know where you stand. You know, we know how artificial you are. We know that what you're saying is what you've been told to say.
Let's talk about Mika right now, pretending that Donald Trump is like the worst thing ever, when there is video of her and Joe on like on a hot mic promising to give him softball questions. Oh, don't go too hard on me, guys. Oh, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys gave us Trump, and now you're pretending like he's like the second coming of Satan. Like
that's the thing that infuriates me about corporate media is that they are very much responsible for Trump.
They gave us Trump.
Yeah, and when the whole thing with the Capitol was happening on January 6th, they're clutching.
I believe it's officially called as storming.
Is it what we're going? Okay,
we're
going with the storming.
The storming of the Capitol.
Okay.
It does have a good ring to it. You can make a good movie if you call it the storming of the Capitol.
Dude.
Yeah.
It'll be Michael Bay. Michael Bay will direct it, and there will be explosions.
Russell Crowe will play the lead.
Who will play Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Selena Gomez is very pretty. I think she would work.
Also, maybe what's her name? Penelope Cruz.
Oh, Oh, I think she
That's
might be a little too old though. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Penelope Cruz. You're still fucking hot, but you know,
You could
Alexandria
have
Ocasio-Cortez is only
Denzel.
like 30, and I think Penelope Cruz is in her 40s. So that might.
Denzel can play like a one of the Capitol Police
Oh,
inside the
totally.
Capitol, you know, like,
Guys,
and
we
it's
just made like a Hollywood blockbuster in like
and
30
you
seconds.
you spin it. What you do is you got Denzel, Russell Crowe, Gerard Butler, Selena
Ooh,
Gomez, right? That's a
nice.
great cast right there.
Yeah,
And the plot circulates around the
very
fact that this is
diverse.
Denzel's last day. Very diverse cast.
Dennis Hopper's hologram plays Trump.
I don't know what.
Sounds
That's
like
another good band name, Dennis Hopper's hologram.
It's fine, Michael Bay. I'll work on the script. Don't worry. There will be one explosion every 5 minutes.
Call us.
Yeah.
We
Give
can
us
be
a
rich.
ring. I watched all of the Transformers movies painfully. I put myself through that.
The first one wasn't bad. Come on.
The first one wasn't bad, but the first one's the only one where they all kind of have a personality, and then the rest of them
That's
is
the only one
like,
I've seen, so that's the only one I can speak on.
oh,
I don't
the rest
watch
of them
a lot
are trash.
Yeah,
The rest of them are pure trash.
I honestly don't watch a lot of movies. People get mad because they're like, "Have you seen this?" No, I haven't seen
Oh,
it.
I've watched like I every time I tell my sister that I'm gonna watch a Transformers movie, and then I will live text what's happening in the movies, and she's like, you don't actually have to do this. I was like, what the fuck, am I gonna go through this alone? Like, what do you?
Did that once. Okay,
Why
so
would I
we
not
went
share my pain with you?
we went to some work thing for my husband, and I got drunk. And we were in the hotel room, and my husband was drunk too, and he passed out, but he had turned on Conan the Barbarian.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
really
Okay.
drunk, and I was live tweeting, watching
Yes.
Conan drunk.
Yes.
And it is honestly some of my best work on Twitter. No
Nice.
lie. It's really funny.
We have a
We have
thing at the house where we're gonna get very drunk and stoned and watch really shitty like action. Like we did that with The Last Airbender with M. Night
Nice.
Shyamalan, which is just a garbage movie.
Yeah. What a disappointment that guy turned out to be.
Yeah.
A lot of
Dude, The Village made me want to like punch him in the face. The Village was terrible.
It was fine. Like I don't know. I watched The Village and I was like,
I was mad.
When the turn came, I was like, oh, okay. I guess
I was
that's
mad. I'm like,
I guess
really?
that's the cliffhanger.
Really, dude?
Is that the one with Mark Wahlberg?
No, that's happening.
Signs.
That's the
No.
the
That's
happening.
that's the
No,
happening.
The Happening.
Signs is with
The
Mel
other
Gibson.
extraterrestrial one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Signs is Mel Gibson. See,
When
I
he's-
have seen a couple
He's
movies.
like, what? Mark Wahlberg's like, is that the one where he's like, what do you mean the trees are killing people?
Yeah. Mhm. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm believable as a school teacher. Should I take my shirt off?
Oh,
Do
his
teachers
hair.
do that?
What is going on with his hair? His hair in that movie is arguably worse than Tom Hanks's hair in the Da Vinci Code.
My husband loves the Da Vinci Code.
But what's going on with Tom Hanks's hair in there?
I don't know.
It's like-
I've only seen
slick
that
back.
partially.
Yeah, it's like
Does it make me look younger? Do I look 10 years younger?
it's like
Like,
he's
no.
wearing like a wig from like the WHIG wig times, like back
Right.
in like the early parliamentary days.
Yeah.
It's like-
He looks like a lord of something.
Yeah. Just ridiculous.
The Lord of Mysteries. Like, what the
Yes.
fuck?
Lord Hanks of the Hollywood. Hollywood's a mess, guys. Hollywood's a hot mess.
Yeah.
That's why I don't watch movies. It's really
So-
bad.
It's tough. I do watch movies and I know that there's like CIA influence in some superhero movies, and now it's like
Oh,
a watch
some?
them.
Some?
All of them. Yeah. They all all of them.
All
I'm a fanboy, so I'm like,
just a
maybe
few
some.
here
Maybe
Right.
the
in there.
My
Spider-Man
husband-
movies don't have CIA influence.
My husband's heard it is okay. It's fine. As long as you're aware of the propaganda and you're not like
Yeah,
taking it in, I think it's okay. As like an
that's where it is. It's
Yeah.
like I watch it and I'm like, "Bop, there it is." That was
Yeah.
written by some fucking
Yeah.
CIA hack.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
hard time not ruining like every superhero movie by like doing that through the whole
Yep.
thing. So I just like try not to talk.
Yeah, no, I think it can be instructive to watch and like
Mhm.
look
It's good to know your
for
enemy.
the propaganda. Like
Yeah.
Chomsky called
I
it.
mean, we should all watch
I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you've seen Manufacturing Consent, the documentary about Chomsky, but I believe he refers to it, or that sort of like mode of paying attention to like the political valences and undertones as uh, courses in intellectual self-defense, something like that. And I agree. Like, I think you can watch those movies. Like, if you want to watch it to entertain yourself, that's totally fine. And, but if you want to watch it critically, I think there is something that you can derive from that speaks to,
totally know your enemy, you guys. You should. You should watch mainstream media. You should pick it apart. You should analyze it. You should watch multiple different channels on one story and see how the story gets shifted or spun. Watch the shift over a course of days. You know what I mean? Like, all that's really important.
I think media criticism. Like,
that's why I love what Ron does. You're right. Ron does a really good job of that.
Ron was the first person to kind of introduce me to a lot of that kind of like, oh yeah, okay, this story is being, and I learned a couple of things about like how to look at the media critically. But if you don't, I mean, that's super important, because I think it self teaches people how to be critical thinkers. How to look at what is being said and how it's being presented to you, and being like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Because that's what I get criticized for is, oh, well, you never show the bad side of whatever. And I took that to heart. I would try to, when I talk about a topic, I try to talk about it from every angle. So even if it's an idea that I truly believe in and I think is going to be good, okay, what are some drawbacks to socialism? What are some drawbacks to something like the Venus Project or resource-based economies or whatever it is that you're talking about, right? And if you kind of look at it more objectively, it makes you a better thinker, right? Like it helps you, and then it helps you kind of argue, okay, this is something that's bad about it. How do we come up with the solution to that problem? And I think like learning how to criticize the media kind of helps you start thinking that way a little bit more.
Yes.
That's the only thing. I wish I would have started doing that a lot earlier. Like I was always kind of a question everything kind of person. So I would question things and I would look into different ideas. Like I remember getting into a huge argument with a friend of mine over universal health care. And, there were some things that she said and I looked it up and I figured out how to, because I looked up something that I, was oppositional to what I believed in, I knew how to counter it when I faced it again. But when it came to the media, I didn't learn about that until like much later. And then once you start looking at it, you go, oh yeah, they are full of shit and they are propagandizing and they are creating this bullshit left, right, red, blue divide that doesn't need to be there. Because I mean, when I was touring around the country, I would have way more conservatives show up than liberals, right? It would be like progressives, a couple liberals, and some conservatives. And the conservatives were the ones that would come up and talk to me. The liberals are the ones that would leave, or on occasion try to convince me to join the Democratic Party.
Funny that,
right? And because I don't fit what they want me to be. We were talking about projection earlier, and that's I mean, it happens on every level. If you're an entertainer in the public sphere, saying that there is a bipartisan attack on something like the Postal Service is, well, no, I think you're mistaken. And then it comes out the excuse of like, well, the Democrats had da 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 da, and they had to be more strategic or whatever it is.
There's always excuses.
Right. And it's like, no, they were trying to defund something that was valuable to the people. They were trying to defund something that actually helped people get messages across the country and connect people together. And, this thing was meant to be something noble, something kind of socialist, right? Like, but they don't want to believe that kind of stuff. But it's the progressives that'll get me drunk. Like that's they're like, this is great. You think like we do. Here's booze, so you can stop thinking.
Yeah,
but that's
I think that people, other people that get it, I think it's like we know how bad it sucks to know. you know, like I tell my husband all the time. The problem with knowing is you can never unknow. Once you know, you're in, and that's it, and you can't look back. There's no like I wish I had that Men in Black like little zapper thing to like wipe my memory of the stuff that I know, because knowing sometimes is really terrifying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when you kind of get caught up in this dichotomy that like corporate media pushes as much as they do, you become unable to criticize your leaders, right?
Yes.
I like Bernie. I think Bernie probably means real well, and he's been consistent on a lot of issues, right? And Eleanor Goldfield will always point out like Bernie's kind of center,
Yeah.
like he's middle of the road compared to the rest of the world. When you talk about truly radical people, like Bernie's not as radical as you might think. It's
not
just,
he's not left. I don't know.
He's not lefty. Yeah, he's
not
more he's more center. He's and that's because America, the Overton window in terms of politics has shifted way over to the right. So Bernie Sanders, by comparison, looks ultra left. So, but that's the thing is I like Bernie. Same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. I like Tulsi, but when they fuck up, it's our job to hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Like when Bernie doesn't show up to vote on an important bill, even if it's no and you're gonna fucking lose, go in there and voice that opinion, right? Like I chastised Tulsi when she endorsed Joe Biden. Didn't make any fucking sense to me. I chastised her with the whole Title IX thing.
Yes.
You're supposed to do that. Yeah. But when you live in that dichotomy where it's red versus blue, and you're criticizing someone that's blue, then you must be on team red.
People seem to think that politicians are their friends. They're not your friends.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like AOC is not your homegirl. Like she's a politician. She has an agenda. She's working for herself. She's supposed to be working for you. How is she going to do that if you won't even not even the tiniest of criticisms? Like you, and if anybody dares to criticize her, you lose your shit. Like she's a fucking politician. Calm down, Susan. Like it's okay.
Yeah, I've been being pilloried by multiple people on Twitter for I think legitimately criticizing her and providing factual information to back it up, but people, it's like this weird cult of personality that just
I hate all politicians.
Flexibly, they I feel like they don't even read the tweet. They just they know somehow through some kind of like
sixth sense.
Yeah, they're like, this is negative. And then they just have this reflexive lash out. They all say the same shit, like, well, what do you want her to do? Blah blah blah.
The excuses.
I don't want her to do anything. I really don't
to her
want
campaign promises.
That would be a good
even
start.
I mean, that's the thing is like, even if it's a losing battle, at least go to battle. At least go show up to the fucking fight.
Yeah,
that's all.
Forget her campaign promises for a minute. Let's lower the bar even more. Okay, forget the campaign promises. Healthcare, forget it.
Wait, was that a pun intended?
What?
She was a bartender?
Well, no.
Oh, okay.
It would have been cool if it was, though. I should have lied there. Let's pretend that it was.
All right.
But seriously, forget healthcare, forget all of that stuff. I would be happy if she would just criticize her own party. Just one time. Yeah. Just one time. I'm really tired of hearing about how Donald Trump is evil and Republicans are bad and Josh Hawley is blah, blah, blah. I don't give a shit. Nancy Pelosi is a demon spawn of a human being who is destroying lives and killing people. And you call her Mama Bear and do magazine covers with her. That's a problem for me. You voted for her twice to be speaker. That's a problem for me. Forget force the vote. If you're progressive, that shouldn't have even been a consideration. I'm sorry. I'm not voting for Nancy Pelosi. I don't know why that's a controversial thing. Like that shouldn't have even been a conversation we were having. They should have never even been considering it to even have a force the vote conversation. That should have been off the table.
There's this weird thing. I remember talking to a friend that was like championing Pelosi, and I very quickly realized, like, okay, if I keep pushing this, I might lose a friend, but I kept my distance from pushing too hard, but very excited about, Pelosi pushing back on the Republican opposition, and being kind of and then what was it? Oh, it was what a brave decision to rip up Trump's speech. Oh, what a badass bitch, right? Like it was kind of like that kind of an argument.
Oh, boy.
I had another person that I met that was excited that Amy Klobuchar treats her interns like garbage and ate a salad with a comb. Like it was kind of like, oh man,
Wait, she
isn't
ate
she
a salad with a comb?
Yeah,
Yes, queen. They
yeah,
didn't have a fork.
yeah. She did. I think
Why
the
would
intern
you?
forgot a fork, so
So
she
the
ate it
intern
with a
should
comb.
use a comb. Like she'd go wash a comb or something. And like
Yeah, it's an
Amy
insane
Klobuchar
story.
is batshit.
Wow.
Like she is not a
She's
nice
an
Talk
person.
unstable
about
person,
She's
but there are
talk
unstable.
people that look at
talk
that and
about
they go,
martyrdom. Talk
They
"Wow,
about
think
look
they're
martyrdom.
how."
powerful and something to be. It's like people who
Yeah,
Ilhan Omar tweeted something about how Kamala Harris is going to be vice president now, so little girls everywhere can feel good about being represented. Fuck that. She's
I wanna be
crazy. I don't want my
represented.
little girls looking up to her. She's
No.
like a complete sociopath. No,
Yeah,
thank you.
I don't want
Like,
that
what
either.
is this representation? Like, she's a monster of a human
Yeah.
being. I don't want to be represented by that. That's disgusting. Those are not
But
role
that's
models for my
surface level
children.
stuff, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Is like I had people I had people coming up to me in 2008 talking about Bobby Jindal. You know, like they were like, "You must be excited about Bobby Jindal," and at that time I was just like, "Who the fuck is Bobby Jindal?" And I looked
Right.
him up,
Yeah.
and I was working at a coffee shop, and it was like these older, these older vets that would come in, and we would fuck with each other all the time. And he asked me about Bobby Jindal, and I was like, I have no idea who he is. Went
Mhm.
home, looked him up, came back the next day, and I was like, I almost don't want to give you your coffee today for comparing me to Bobby Jindal, because that guy is a monstrous piece of shit. That
Yeah.
cut the budget from like his mom's college. Like he jeopardized his own mom's career. Like this guy is a massive piece of shit. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with Ajit Pai. It's the same shit with Neera Tanden and Nikki Haley and all these people. They just go, oh well, they're brown. You must like
Cory
them.
Booker,
Corey, you're right. And it's like all of these
Sucker
people
Bucks.
who care. That surface level shit is what it's nice, great. Someone that looks like me but believes none of the things that I do.
Right.
You know when I'll be represented in Congress, when someone goes up and actually fights for health care and a UBI and
People.
defunding the police and doing like all of the things that I actually fucking believe in, then I'll feel like I'm represented.
Yes.
Till then, I don't have like there is no real representation of
No.
what I believe in
There isn't.
Congress
There's
or in
surface
higher
level
leadership.
representation, and I
Yeah.
understand why that to some degree that is beneficial. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure it is. I mean, I'm a white woman, so it's not like I can really speak to a lot of that, but it's, I'm sure that there to some degree that does have a positive effect on, especially children. But when those people that look like you do terrible things, that isn't really something I want my kids looking up to. I don't
Right.
want, you know
Exactly.
what I'm saying? Like Kamala
Yeah.
Harris being a woman
Yeah.
means precisely dick to me. She's terrible. She's going to do terrible things. She's done terrible things in the past. I don't want my kids
Yeah. I
up to
think
somebody like that. Or Hillary
think-
Clinton. Like that's
I-
not a role model.
I think it's a cruel irony that the first woman,
It's
female, whatever you
Half
prefer,
black, half South
whichever you
Asian.
prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, are we still allowed to say minority, or is that
Yeah, I think that's fine.
yeah, I
has
think
that,
that's
has that
I'll
been
allow
canceled?
it.
she does check. I mean, she does check several different
But the fact that Kamala Harris is that figure,
it's,
and that young women are essentially told to look up to that when she's somebody who's, as the DA of California, increased the school to carceral pipeline. It's a cruel irony that it has to be like that. It's her who's the first one in that role, so to
I mean,
speak.
but to be fair to her, if it wasn't her, it would be somebody else equally as awful. You don't get to that
Also-
position in this country unless you are a shit stain of a human being.
Yeah,
So-
I agree. I'm just saying, like, since she's the one who's
Right.
VP
Yeah.
now, I think
so
she's
and
one of
there's
many glaring examples.
there's this amazing level of hypocrisy that comes out too, because when I was supporting Bernie over Hillary in 2016, I mean, the hordes of people that came out was just like, oh, you're just afraid of a woman in power, and I was like, no, I just I just want to see less people that look like me get blown up by drones.
Yeah.
Is that cool? Is that reason enough for me to
Yeah.
not support a fucking monstrous warhawk? Like, is
Right.
that okay? Like, but that wasn't, so the surface level stuff is basically where they stop.
Who called
this
for a
woman-
no-fly zone over Syria, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
essentially a declaration of war.
Yep. And it was one of the, like, I remember, I mean, after the election, I was living in DC, and this younger comic, I showed up to an open mic, and this younger comic, and she didn't know who I was or anything, and she just started screaming at me because I had a Bernie button on my jacket, and she starts yelling about why I voted for Trump, and I was like, first of all, immigrant, I got my citizenship in 2019, and I was like, at that point, I couldn't vote, and I was like, can't vote, so I didn't fucking do anything,
Yeah.
and I had to explain it to her, and she still was just like, you're just afraid of powerful women. So fast forward to 2019, and Tulsi Gabbard announces her presidency, and I knew who she was. I knew what she stood for, and I was like, well, she's an interesting person, and I believe in, she seems to share a lot of the same beliefs and values that I do.
Mhm.
Put my support in for her, and even then, it wasn't the right woman, right?
Yeah.
Like, Tulsi Gabbard checked
Yeah.
off all the boxes.
Hmm.
But she didn't check off all the boxes for the establishment to keep her on that surface level.
That's the thing. She is really interesting to me because, for one, I can't quite figure her out.
Me too. Yeah.
She, like, there are some things about her that I love. She is very vocally pro Assange, pro Snowden, pro Chelsea Manning, very vocally against the Espionage Act, came out with legislation to reform it. I would have rather abolished it, but I'll take what I can get. But and she voted against impeachment, which I thought was the right call. And she's very against
Well,
interventionist
didn't she-
wars, kind
didn't-
of.
Wasn't she? Didn't she no vote?
Oh, she
voted
didn't show up. She
No,
did.
she voted
She's
present.
present.
Like,
Yeah.
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 She did.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Which was a huge controversy, but I thought was the right call. But I can't really figure her out. But the thing that was most interesting to me was to watch the Democratic Party twist themselves into pretzels to discredit her. And I mean, like you said, she checks all of the boxes. She's a
Yep.
woman. She's a person of color. She's a veteran. She's a young congressperson. She surfs, like she's super like kind of cool and hip with the kids, like, and they
Shops at Whole
her.
Foods
Yeah.
and Trader
Yeah.
Joe's.
But I mean, in 2016, she talked about how she was warned, if you break rank and you support Bernie Sanders, there will be hell to pay. You are going to piss off
Yeah.
people. And she spoke to that in 2016, and she was right. I mean, if she was on the fast track to being the next Democratic nominee, like she was very popular within the party. She was the DNC vice chair. Like she was on the fast track. And that's, I mean, to some degree, like there's a lot of things I don't like about her.
Yeah.
That really bother me.
Yeah.
But I have a great deal of respect for somebody
I
who's
had-
willing to go against Hillary Clinton.
I had the same issue, and a lot of it was, I think there was a big misunderstanding of her spirituality, and there's a difference between where her parents went and where she decided to go. The Title IX thing is very confusing for someone
Yeah.
that is legislated for the LGBTQ community. And I was very critical of her, and I took a bunch of shit, because
We
to
did
me,
too.
it's just, instead of making it an exclusionary stance, why not look at Title IX, which is already kind of complicated and broken? Why not figure out a way to fix it and make it more inclusive?
Right.
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 So that was my point. And but again, even her like boycotting the fourth DNC debate, which she had like made it to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So even that was, I was just like, what is the fucking point of what you're
Yeah.
doing? This is so confusing.
She is very confusing.
She kind of has these very juxtaposed actions that she takes, and they are very confusing to me. But that's the thing, is like, I think I'm allowed to say, well, I like Tulsi for for being anti-military industrial complex and pro Assange, but I don't like Tulsi for this thing, and that should be okay and
Wait a
acceptable as
minute.
art.
Yeah.
What you're talking about here is nuance, and that's not allowed.
Yeah. Yeah. This
That's
is
right. We
we
banned
don't
that in
do new
2016.
we don't do nuance on this show.
No.
No.
No. A marmot climbed into the Howard colander, and there's no more nuance. It's
Did
been
I
killed.
just shut the podcast down, or is it over?
Yes.
Because
Yeah,
that killed the
that's-
pod. It's
Dude,
canceled.
dude, you
Yes.
canceled it.
With like one sentence, you just
Once
canceled
I
the entire
that's-
internet.
That's the amount of power that I hold.
I know, right? I know.
No, but
People
think
always say people are like so powerful. What they just say about Jimmy Dore, something he's so powerful that he's gonna turn the left into white supremacists. And I'm like, y'all should be nicer to him. I mean, if he's that powerful, be nice.
what the fuck does that even
Piss him
mean?
off. I don't know. It's the same thing about Susan Sarandon swinging a whole election. She's a fucking actress, for God's sake.
Right,
I mean,
right.
come on, Jill
Well,
Stein.
this is the thing is I've had people
She's a
criticize me
smart,
on
beautiful
that
woman.
too.
Who I think is politically astute, Susan Sarandon.
She's not that
And I
powerful.
think,
Love you, Susan.
well, I just think, people. I mean, everybody loves to pile on to a celebrity, right? And try to be the one who gets to like
Well, and she dared to step outside the approved narrative.
get the
Well, this is
punchline.
the thing is again, it happens on all levels. Like I'm a small fry compared to a bunch of I'm a small fry compared to like Jimmy and Lee and but even whenever people see what I do and they look at like, oh, he's being critical of Biden, and they start asking questions, I've literally got the statement of, well, don't you think that criticizing the Democratic Party when we need to get rid of Donald Trump is dangerous? I'm only bringing this up because you have a platform. This is something that somebody said to me, and I countered it by saying that it's not just about getting rid of Trump. Trump is a symptom of a much larger disease, and I'm talking about the disease, and Biden represents the disease, right? And we went through this thing, and then eventually it just spirals and goes, well, you're bullshit anyway. This is why nobody wants to see your channel, and your channel never grows, and this, that, and the third. So the question is, wait, am I a piece of shit nothing? Or am I someone with a platform that can influence a bunch of people?
Okay.
Like which one? Where's that?
Yeah.
Recently, Krish, somebody made I don't know what you would call it, like a hate video, like that included myself. This was the first time I was like publicly called a fascist. And so in one like sentence, this person was like, okay, so the people I'm about to talk about are insignificant, and I'm like, so wait.
Yeah.
Am I insignificant, or am I dangerous enough that you have to make a whole ass video calling me a fascist? Make up your mind.
Yeah.
And it's like this
She
amazing.
didn't take her Zyprexa that day.
I mean, I don't know what that whole thing is, but yeah, there's this whole group of people who think that you cannot. They really don't have nuance in their life at all. They have no ability to hold to equally true things in their head if they don't go together. Trump can be an asshole and Nancy Pelosi can be a piece of shit at the same time. Both of those things can be true.
Right.
And it's okay to hold those.
It's that thing of not supporting Trump and also not supporting Biden, but when you lock everything into a duopoly, then you have to choose between, and that's why the lesser of two evils arguments always comes up, right? Is oh, you make the choice for what you think is going to be the least worst thing out there.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, why are we picking awful things?
Yeah. We have to have awful things. It can be better. It really is.
Yeah, it's and that's always what it is. It's always just Sophie's choice, right? Like even look at what the way Biden deals with sanctions is, I remember and people chastise me for this too, is he wants Iran to join the nuclear deal, and only if they join the nuclear deal will he lift sanctions to get them medicine during a fucking pandemic. In my head, it's, wait a minute, if you're the candidate for empathy, then just fucking lift the sanctions.
Yeah.
And then figure out how to talk to them about the nuclear deal, right? And where do you get off being the only fucking country that's ever dropped a nuclear bomb on anybody else to say what other countries can do? Yeah. Guess why we have a fucking nuclear program on a global scale? It's because of you, asshole. Like, It's
Yeah.
because a barely high school graduated president decided that he didn't want to do the job and wanted to end the war and dropped 2 nuclear bombs before he realized what the fuck that would actually do.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why everybody was like, holy shit, if these people can do it, we got to figure out how to defend ourselves from it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
now we're like that. But again, it's the same thing of like, yes, you should want people to, nuclear warfare to be regulated, but also not want people to die of a fucking pandemic during a fucking pandemic. So why would you want to keep sanctions on a country? So
Children.
you can have that.
Children.
You can
Yeah.
think two things simultaneously, but
Well-
that's not how we're propagandized as a country. I think last time I was on Action for Assange, Gordon Dimmock said that America is like one of the most propagandized countries, and
Steve
the
said
more
that
you
all
look
the
into it,
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
he's
more you kinda look
he's
into it-
absolutely right.
absolutely,
Mhm.
we're. I mean, this entire country is a propaganda machine.
And you're propagandized from birth. Like it
Yes.
starts immediately. The propaganda begins from birth, and it's
Yep.
very hard to break yourself of.
Yep.
Oh, someone on Twitter last night called me a propagandist. So, folks,
Oh.
you're watching
Yeah,
propaganda
I
right
got
now.
that too. When I talked shit on Neera Tanden, they said that I'd fallen for the propaganda and now I'm part of it. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, neat,
Yeah. Yeah.
fun.
Thanks for the diagnosis.
Yeah. Person who is friends with Neera Tanden, like get better friends. Get better friends. That's
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So, Krish, I know you have to hop off soon.
Yeah, we have like been on for a
we don't
long
want
time.
to
Put
keep
down.
you too much. We don't want to keep you too much
This was fun.
longer. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's been absolutely fun. I'm just curious, when you started doing comedy, was it at the forefront for you to have it be politically engaged, or is that something that you grew into as your career progressed?
I actually didn't intend on being a political. I always enjoyed political comedy, but because I didn't know enough about the issues and I wasn't educated, I never wanted to talk about it because I just didn't know enough. But eventually it started becoming like it was impossible for me to not address race or immigration or religion, because
what's your sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're
just
fine.
to put it into context, like what's your background?
Oh,
as
I grew up in a
Christian
pretty
goes?
conservative Hindu household, and
Okay.
me and my sister are like the black sheep in our family.
Yeah.
Like we don't think very traditionally.
Mhm.
So I grew up Hindu, but I'm an agnostic now.
Mhm.
So my viewpoint comes from an outsider virtually on every lens. Is the way that I see it. Is I don't really fit in with traditional Indian folks. I don't fit in with traditional American culture, and I don't fit in with like traditional atheists and stuff, right? Like the ones that are like, oh, if you believe in a god, then you're dumb, kind of thing. Like I've had
Right.
atheists that get mad at me because I don't say that on
Yeah,
stage.
those are like the Richard Dawkins kinds of atheists, and they're just,
Yeah,
don't
that's.
listen to them.
I
And
said
yeah.
earlier that I consider myself an atheist,
I'm
but
an
yeah, certainly not in
The
that.
Dawkins level of
No.
Yeah, that
Those guys are
priggish
decent
level.
news. They're very
Yeah.
smart. Like Richard Dawkins has done some great work, but he's
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think there's. I
he's
think with
also
that-
tweeted some horrible shit about how
He's
it's.
awful.
Did you
He's
see
pretty
that tweet a few years ago he put out where he said, it was I guess he tweeted it in the morning, and it's so nice to wake up this morning and hear the sound of like church, or not church bells, or like the sound of birds or something, rather than cries of Allahu Akbar. And like people like jumped on him like
He's
for
a
that.
really big piece of shit. Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, what
But
a
that's all
fucking
anger, right?
Yeah.
I look at someone like Dawkins, and there's so much anger within that man.
yes.
I mean, I'm angry too, but I think everybody.
He's just too smart for there to be excuses for that level of ignorance.
I agree.
I agree. I think so too. I think he lets his anger.
I think he's an Islamophobe.
Yes.
I'm gonna say
absolutely.
that.
And
I
Sam
think-
Harris too, and yes.
I think
Yeah.
these are people that at certain times let their emotions dictate their actions, which sucks. because you don't want to see intellectual people like that,
Yeah.
fall down that rabbit hole. And look, I've done that too. But I mean, in the context of comedy, is yes, a lot of it came from anger. I was mad at the Catholic Church. I was mad at, the hypocrisies within Christianity and Hinduism and all that. And again, it's like I never intended on talking about this sort of stuff, but to me, it was natural. It was just who I
Yeah.
was, and the less. Well, I'll put it this way: the more I tried to do what I thought people wanted me to do, was to go up and talk in the accent and make fun of my parents, which was all great stuff for me to do when I was 16, 17 years old. But as I grew up, the more I did it, the more I realized they're not laughing at what I'm writing and the way I'm performing. They're laughing at the accent and that's not what I
The
want.
stereotypes and
Yeah. I want something with a little bit more substance to it. And so I started
Absolutely.
talking about, not just surface level jokes, but like let's try to learn something and use information as my fodder for humor. And I struggled with that for a while because I didn't have an outlet for it. So I started doing this web show, and that became an outlet for it. And then I I kind of started plagiarizing myself and rewriting stuff for stand up, because it's just a different format. But that's the
Right.
thing is I grew into it because that's who I always was. I always
Yeah.
was this sort of skeptical intellectual, and I love to like learn stuff. And so anytime somebody like Steve Poinkin is great for this. Like he'll just mention something and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What are you even talking? And then I get to look it up and I'm like, this is amazing. This is crazy. So I always like that. So to me, my personal life is very boring. There's not a lot of jokes I can write about, watching The Mandalorian and playing a video game. Like there's no jokes for me to write.
you have
about
a
that
good
life.
bit, and you have a new good bit in your new album actually, where you're like, this is just me. I'm the guy that shows up to the party with a copy of Manufacturing Consent.
Yeah. It's just that's what I do. I ruin parties. Like I show up. Like, did you guys fucking hear about Syria? And they're like, who the fuck? Why is... Oh man. All right, let him talk.
They're like, yeah, I saw Syriana. Clooney was really good in that one.
Oh.
That's that's the turn.
No, I think you're right. I think that it's I think people who have a sort of like a turnoff to what they might term political comedy, it stems from like I think a willful ignorance and not wanting to deal with the issues. Like in the same way that they won't seek out independent sources of information, like if they have the time to do it. And I feel, we were talking earlier about the politics being personal and vice versa. And I think like some of the most, like the best comedy and some of the most important and vital comedy in history has been performed by comedians who've done that. You mentioned Bill Hicks earlier,
Bill.
Yes.
George Carlin, Richard Pryor. I would.
Yeah.
I mean, even
And
Richard Ace, is great. Like he actually has a bit where he talks about how he thinks it's funny that he can get people to laugh at the word genocide. Like, that's if you can get somebody, and Krish is great at this because I do have a dark sense of humor. You have to be like politically engaged, and that's why I've always loved political comedy. If you can make me think and laugh at the same time, like that's gold. That's amazing. And
That's what I always loved about it.
yes.
That's what I always loved about people like Hicks and Carlin is,
mhm.
man, just there. The first time I listened to this, I was just like, holy shit, I can't believe you can get away with stuff like this. But Carlin was at this point where I think he had I don't think he had any interest in pleasantries at this point in his career. This is like early 2000s. And he just comes on stage and everybody's cheering and he just waves them down. And he goes, hey, you guys ever notice how people that protest abortions are people you wouldn't fuck anyway? And that's the way that he opens the show, right? Like, it's not a hi, hello, how are you? It's just boom.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know,
He
and
ran
then,
out
like,
of talks. Like,
right.
yeah.
It was just I was blown away. I'd never heard anything like that, right? So, but Carlin had the license to do that because
Yes.
he had a room that was specifically there to see him, and they don't care that he's not saying
and
hello.
people knew what they were getting. Like, you go to Stuart Collins for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the room itself, I think, was taken a little back with like, whoa. But
Because even
also,
that,
yeah, okay, you know, and they kind of got it, and then they started getting into it, and he has this, and I think it's the same album where he has capital punishment for like bankers and like war criminals, and like like that's what capital punishment should be used for, is people that defraud average citizens and things of that sort. Like, and it's like, but he sets it all up.
Yeah.
I mean, he, like, within that first joke, you're like, oh, this is not going to be any softballs.
Yeah.
You know, but that was the thing. Is like, I was like, holy shit, how do I do that where I can go on stage and talk about what I want to talk about, and maybe not within the first 10 seconds introduce some heavy concept shit, but at least talk about what I want to talk about and get people comfortable talking about some dark, heavy stuff that's a little bit more complex than just the average stuff. So, and again, it was a big learning curve of figuring out how to tell stories the right way, how to dissect, you know, complicated issues, and you know, they're all up in the stratosphere. How do I bring them down to the ground level so that everybody can understand it, even if this is not really a viewpoint that you can, but that's the exciting part to me, is that's the challenge, right? Is how do I do that? That's what I get excited about, is how do I convince the average person that Julian Assange is a journalist through humor?
Yeah.
And part of it is to call Mike Pompeo the most dangerous Care Bear that this country has to offer. Because I think he looks like a fucking Care Bear.
Oh, his belly badge beat.
He looks like a lot of things.
I think his belly rub would just transport you to Gitmo. That's
okay. Care Bear stairs. I have kids. Sorry.
Possibly the squarest head on the planet.
Oh, and okay, go to his Twitter page, Krish. This will be fun for you. Go to his Twitter page and look at his chin. He had somebody Photoshop his chins.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's
saw something about that.
Personal account. So I don't. But when he had his like White House account on Twitter, his like little portrait or whatever that they do, like your official White House, whatever. His chins are photoshopped, and it's a terrible job. Like somebody did. It's like really bad. It's terrible. I'll see if I can find a picture. It's hilarious.
They probably had the CIA do it, like in
the CIA could do a better job.
Like 97, I think it was, when the CIA did the propaganda video about how TWA Flight 800 crashed, and they kept saying over and over, it was not a missile. Right. It was not a missile. Right. So and it was like this horrible production. Like, I remember even watching it as a kid and being like, who made this? Like, this is like, there's much better technology available now than this. And so I wouldn't put it past the CIA to have Photoshop Pompeo's chin. So
terribly, though. I mean, it's bad. Like, seriously, my 10-year-old could do better. Real talk. Yeah. Real talk. Yeah. Yes.
So okay, Krish, let's wrap up. But I always do this.
Here he goes.
One last question. Right,
Krish. He does this every
Who are some contemporary comedians you'd recommend or you'd want to give a shout out to? You know, people who viewers should pay attention to.
Lee Camp is definitely one of the top people that I think people should be paying attention to. Ron Placone. Yep. There's a comic by the name of Stuart Huff. Stuart is a amazing philosophical storytelling comic, and he was one of the first. Him and Lee are probably the two biggest influences that I have, that like kind of taught me how to become more of myself on stage. yeah, those are some folks that I would recommend checking out for sure. Lee Camp, definitely check out Rumplicone and Stuart Huff. Yeah, those are like the three big
Camp,
influences. And
Lee Camp is great. He came to our Assange protests in DC. And
yes,
spoke. And we greatly appreciate him doing that. It was amazing. He was amazing. I embarrassed myself in front of him by being a dork, but that's what I do. So yeah, those are. I haven't heard of Stuart yet, so I'm going to check him out. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
So,
same here. Same
yeah,
here.
but so as we wrap up,
forward
can you
to it.
tell people? So the newest album came out over the summer, right? Politely Angry.
yes, came
Okay,
out. I
so
put it out in June of 2020, and
where can
I
everybody
put it
find
out.
that at?
If you can grab everything that I do right on my website, which is krishmohanhaha.com. It's KRISHMOHANHAHA.com,
Okay.
which it's basically the one-stop shop for all things Krish Mohan. So
Cool. And where
yeah.
can they find you
Awesome.
out on Twitter so that everybody can follow you on Twitter too?
Yeah, at Krish Mohan Haha.
Cool.
All
Very
right.
easy to
Well
remember.
streamlined.
Yeah, we'll put those links in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. I listened to the album on
people
Bandcamp,
can-
and everybody should check out Bandcamp because you can support independent artists, which is amazing.
Thank you for buying the album, by the way. That was
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I actually own 2 of your albums.
Oh, right on. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yay.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan. Really, I'm a fan.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is really
so
fun.
everybody, today our guest has been Krish Mohan. He's an amazing comic. You should definitely check out his work at his website or on Twitter. He posts stuff on Twitter all the time too. Check out the other comics that he mentioned. Those are all excellent choices. Again, I haven't heard of Stuart yet, but I'm excited to check him out. If he was an influence on you, I'm sure I'll like him. So
He's awesome.
yeah, I'm excited to go check out some of his stuff for sure. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next time.